Hi everyone, welcome to my fitness drive. I'm TJ, your personal trainer in training, and today we're going to dive right into our very first video of our beginner boxer series. In boxing, there are 6 basic punches. We have the jab, we have the cross, the lead hook, the rear hook, the lead uppercut, and the rear uppercut. And in today's video, we're going to be covering the first 2, the jab and the cross. So let's get right into it. All right, so before we get into actually punching, it's important that we get into our boxer stance. So the correct way to get into the boxer stance is to imagine that we are standing on the face of a clock. So when you think about the face of a clock, you have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. So our lead leg will be pointed 12, and our rear leg, if you're right-handed, will be pointing at 3. If you're left-handed, will be pointing at 9. All right, so for all intents and purposes of the training, I'm right-handed, so I will be demonstrating everything from a right-hand perspective. For those of you who are left-handed, just know that everything will be flipped, okay? So our boxer stance, my left leg is going to be facing 12 o'clock. My right leg is going to be facing 3. I'm going to have my arms up. My shoulders are going to be relaxed. So with my shoulders relaxed, I'm not up here and I'm not down here. I'm guarding myself, but I still have visibility on what's going on, right? So if my opponent is facing me, I can see the shoulders and I can see how he's moving. And we also don't want our shoulders too high up, so we're not throwing our punches from up here. We're not guarding from up here. We want to be able to see our opponent. We want to be able to throw fluid punches, but not from a tense position. So stay relaxed. And when we throw our punches, our fists are going to be tight. It's important that our fists are tight because if we're throwing punches with loose fists, then you can injure yourself, okay? So let me turn towards the camera. You're gonna notice that I kind of have a little bit of a wide stance. So my body's gonna be facing my left, or my lead leg. My stance is just a little wider than shoulder length, okay? We don't wanna be too narrow because being too narrow causes us to shift our balance, and when we're throwing punches, we need to be balanced to keep our center of gravity. All right, so we're back in our stance. Our arms are up, we're here, and now we're going to throw our first punch, which will be the jab. All right, so before we actually throw the punch, I should probably cover how your fist should be. So you're going to take your hand and you're going to take all 4 of your fingers and you're going to tuck them into your palm. So none of your fingernails are visible. And you're going to take your thumb and you're going to lock it over your index and your middle fingers. Okay? And when you throw your punch, you're going to make contact with this side of your fist. So you're not going to have it here because by doing this, when you make contact, you can cause injury to your thumb and possibly break it. So again, we're taking our fists, we're folding it in. Our fingernails are not going to be visible, so we're tucking it into our thumb and we are locking our thumb over our index and middle fingers, okay? So when we connect our punches, we're going to be connecting with this flat side of your fist. Okay? And the same is going to be true with your right hand. When we're throwing our punch, we're going to start with the jab. For the jab, we're going to cover everything separately, but just so you're aware, your jab, you're going to be stepping as you're jabbing, okay? So let's cover the first half of it. So when you're throwing your jab, you're going to take your fist, so you're in here, right? You're in your boxer stance, you're here. Right? You're not too low, you're not too upright. You want to be upright, but you want to have your guard up. And when you're throwing your jab, your fist is going to come out, rotate, and again, you're making contact with the flat side of your fist. So you're not throwing like this, you're not throwing like this. You're just taking your fist, your palms are facing inward, you're going to throw and your fist is gonna rotate. So it rotates, making contact with the flat side, and then it rotates back with your palm facing inward. Again, and one more time, out, rotate, contact with the flat side, bring it back in, rotate back, and you're resetting here. All right, so you can only drive so much power and force punching from this position. So this is going to lead us into the second half of the jab, which is our lower body. What should our lower body be doing when our upper body is doing this? Okay, so for every time we come out with a jab, we need to also step while we're throwing our jab. You're going to step in when you punch and bring it back. So your feet and your fist, your foot and your fist, they're gonna be doing the same thing. So as my fist connects, my foot is out. As I bring my fist back in, so does my foot. So again, jab, back, jab, back, jab, back. There are a number of different reasons why you would throw a jab. You can throw for speed to kind of shepherd your opponent where you want them to be. You can throw a jab for power, obviously for power, so that way you can do damage to your opponent. But yeah, I mean, there's different reasons why you would be throwing a jab. Just always make sure that when you are throwing a jab, you're going to throw it the same way every time. Out with your fist rotating, contact with the flat side, and then you're bringing it back in. Your power is going to come from your hip. So you're driving out and you're bringing it back in every time. Okay, so here are a few jabs in succession. So jab, 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 jab. All right, so for the crosses, the reason why they're called crosses is because they have to travel across your body to meet your opponent. So if I go back into my boxer stance, right, I'm here, my jab is just coming straight from my rib cage to the front to meet my opponent. But my opposite arm, so my rear arm, is gonna have to travel across my body to meet my opponent. So for me, again, my right arm is my rear arm. So in order for it to meet my opponent, it has to go across my body to meet my opponent and then reset back. So I mentioned that because in the beginning, it can be a little confusing which arm is your jab versus which arm is your cross. And that's gonna be the simplest way for you to remember. A jab is gonna make direct contact with your opponent with your lead arm. Your rear arm has to come across your body, hence cross. So much like the jab, our body is doing different things. Our upper body is gonna do one thing, our lower body is gonna do another thing, right? So when we're throwing our cross, just like with our jab, how our wrist is gonna rotate and our fist is gonna meet our opponent, when we throw the cross, it's going to rotate and the flat side is going to meet your opponent and you're gonna reel it back in, resetting in your default boxer stance. So again, your cross comes across your body, your fist rotates, makes contact with your opponent and comes back, rotating back, and you're here. Now, as this is happening, our lower body is also doing something. So just like with the jab where we were stepping in and stepping back, stepping out and stepping back in, our rear leg is going to pivot. So again, we're pivoting. So we're essentially just twisting our body and our foot is pivoting as we're twisting our hip. So all together, when we throw, we pivot out, and as we reel it back in, while we're rotating, we're pivoting back to our 3 o'clock position. For our left-handed viewers, you'll be pivoting back to your 9 o'clock position. So one more time, cross and pivot, bring it back, cross and pivot, bring it back. And then a few crosses in succession, cross, back, cross, back, cross, back, cross, back. The first combination that we're going to learn is a simple jab cross. Now you're going to notice that as you throw your jab cross combination, while you're resetting from the jab, you're throwing your cross. So it's jab, cross, jab, cross, jab, cross, reset, jab, cross, reset, jab, cross, reset. Now, if you do, let's say, another combination, jab, cross, then what's gonna happen is this. You're gonna tap, 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 pivot. Now, you would really only do that if you're doing speed, right? So your jab, cross for speed. You're gonna be tapping the entire way through, and then on your last hit, which would be your cross, you're going to pivot, reset. There's a whole host of different combinations that you can throw just with the jab and the cross punches. The next time we reconvene on our boxer series, we'll cover the next two punches, which would be the lead hook and the right hook. And then after that, we'll cover uppercuts. So stay tuned for that. All right, and that's it. I mean, there's really not much to it when it comes to the jabs and the crosses. But there is a lot that can go wrong. So again, just to recap, we don't want to be tense. We don't want to throw our fists from up here. We want to keep our shoulders relaxed. When we throw our punches, we're going to be throwing from a relaxed state, but our fists are going to be tight. And again, the reason that is because we want to avoid injury to the hand, right? So if we're throwing loose punches and your opponent, let's say, moves into your fist and your fist wasn't ready for that impact, you're going to make contact, and that can damage the bones in your knuckles. So when you throw your punches, keep your fists tight. When we're in our stance, we keep our chin tucked and we're guarding, on each side. Practice rotating your fists as you're throwing your punches. So when you're making your fists, you tuck in your fingers, you lock it over your index and your middle fingers, and when you connect, you're always connecting with the flat side. So going back to the stance, have a wide stance. You want to be able to have control over your center of gravity. Don't have it too wide, but don't have it too narrow either, right? If we're too narrow, we can cause imbalances, and if we're too wide, again, we could be imbalanced. And you have some time, practice stepping when you're throwing your jab, practice pivoting when you're throwing your crosses, practice drawing the force, and practice coming back, resetting without losing your balance, throwing your punches without losing your balance. Everything I've demonstrated was from a right-handed perspective, so for our left-handed viewers, it's flipped. So when you jab with your right and you step with your right foot. You pivot with your left as you're throwing your cross. Practice that. And eventually we're gonna get there. We're all growing there together. And there's still a lot that I'm learning. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you appreciate what's popping out, please go ahead and do me a favor and like and subscribe. Share the video with family and friends. I would really appreciate the support. So until next time, stay safe, be active, and I will catch you next time on My Fitness Drive.